Alright, start na tayo. So, I think one is that my point this talk, hindi siya trading techniques. So, yun. So this is not about trading techniques. And, yeah. So, okay, mag-walk out kayo. Yung point ko lang is, I want to share from how I think, a way to think lang eh. So, how we learn, why it's so hard to learn and improve in what we do in trading, and what ways of thinking can help us learn better. So I'm trying to share some probably ways, parang mindset on how we could get better. Okay? So, I'll share an anecdote lang. So you can ask questions anytime naman. Share an anecdote is parang how we learn to fly. How did we learn to fly daw? And what ways did you think we used when we learned to fly? What did we observe? Birds. So we look at birds. So first step, when we learn something, we try to do observation. So we look at birds and learn some birds. Feathers. My wings, my feathers. So simply bats and birds and people. These are like people try to build contraptions that resemble them. And obviously, mga iba, di ba namatay, but did not fly. Diba? So through failure, we had to go back and try to find where there are more things. One thing they observed, then after that, they observed that ostriches and penguins don't fly. So you're now trying to find, anong kaya meron dito, but wala. So you are now trying to find more attributes that could convince it. And so one theory at that time, that's in 1200s, was it was the bird's bone now. It was hollow for the birds and human bone very dense. So kahit anong gawin daw, baka mahirap talaga lumipad yung tao in general. So they created contraptions that could overcome it and then did not fly again. And then finally, there was this principle na it's called Bernoulli principle daw. But basically, yung magic this is parang pag blinuho mo from the top, the thing would move. Parang hindi kaya. Pero malaki. But the point is, they understand something else na parang if the wind comes from the top, but the thing because of air pressure would create flight. And so, eventually they were able to find causation, which is what could be things that cause flight. And it became better and better known. Okay, so I'll just share with you some things later why I'm talking about this. But basically, when you build a theory, you try to observe, you try to categorize based on attributes what could drive that theory, and finally, you try to make statements on what could be the cause. So for example, minsan sa trading, you see, let's say, fundamentals. You'll try earnings. Maybe earnings is driving prices. And then you go over it, you'll try to look at other things. You find what we call, eventually you find attributes that you think could drive prices higher. So what are attributes normally that we look for? Market cap. Maybe you look at market cap. We look at growth. So you try to connect na baka these things could have a higher probability of working. So you're looking at correlation. But the goal is eventually you want to understand why things move it. Because when you understand why things move, it becomes context-based, your decision. Okay? So, how do you go from these steps to this step down? And the goal is you want to find things that don't work. You want to find anomalies. Basically, whenever you have a theory, there are things that don't work. you want to look for them so that you can question and see baka there's something more to it. So whenever, so sa flight, whenever there was a crash, they had to go back and work ano yung pwedeng cost that could be tweaked so that you could improve the system. And so, for me, let's say attributes, so we spend a lot of time on attributes, pero for me, minsan causation behind what's really driving this, a proper one for me, in my opinion, is like mispricing. Meaning that's the cost of why certain categories could lead to price. Okay. Sige, baka masyadong ano eh. But masyadong theory pa eh. But basically, you're moving away from just simple attributes to what could be the cost. So kunyari, attributes of technicals, let's say volume breakouts. Right? We look at those. What could be the cost behind those attributes? That's the next question you want to ask. And every time you have something that did not work, you have to go back to it. How do I explain it? Example, I'll show an example lang na medyo trading related. Let's say noong February, the market crash, diba? Market crash sa US eh. So I had a theory, whenever the market crash, what do we look for? We look for relative strength. So at that time, parang ginawa, I just bought a basket of relative strength stocks. So kung naalala nyo, bought para ACA, ABBV, Netflix, APMD, and during that time, di lahat umakyat eh. Di lahat umakyat. So these two did not work. These two eventually went up. So for me, whenever you have a theory, you're now trying to find out what could these two have that these two don't have, so that you can refine the theory para next time, you could keep on tweaking it. You're looking for this confirming evidence basically. So, for me, this is like big cut nga, hindi masyadong growth. So you're trying now to find ano ba talaga? Ano ba gumagana, anong hindi gumagana? Pag hindi gumagana, you go back, you try to recategorize so that you have another better theory of how prices should move and build a better causation such that the next time, let's say relative strength, sabihin ko, I want to choose only a basket of growth stocks and then look again whether at that time, most of those stocks would now move. I think or black stairs. Pero may questions. Malabo ba? My point is, it's a learning process where we teach you kasi you're being taught FTS everything na eh. But all of them are correlations eh. You're now trying to make sense of why certain setups work here, certain setups work out here, and that becomes very context-based.
Parang ba siyang screener for your theory? Na parang whenever you find this confirming evidence, you add another filter to the screener.
Pwede. You could, or you find there's a different cause behind it. So, I think kasi whenever I teach in Kalo, meron ako tinuturo eh. And then after a while, some of those things don't happen eh. So I have to go back. Did I miss anything? Were there other factors that could have driven it? And now you get a better refined analysis of things. Okay, can we go back? We'll go back here. Sabi sa inyo masyadong hindi na to related sa market. So, if... kaya ba? But this is how, whenever you have a difficulty, that's where you grow. That's what it basically means. Whenever you're, parang feeling mo, dapat ganoon lang, tapos hindi nangyayari yung feeling mo eh. You have to go back and ask what you did not see. And that's very hard because humans, you don't want to go back to your mistakes. Kasi ina-assume mo, yun na yung process mo eh. Tama na yan eh. So it's so hard to do that. So hard to do that. Okay, so basically what he says that in the world, I think in science, alam niyo parang basically you're doing hypothesis testing. So you look for anomalies eh. You look for something that your theory could not explain, and you want them. You want anomalies. So tingin mo dapat trend, relative strength. And then, why are there stocks na relative strength that don't work? Not every relative strength works. But you know there's an edge there. So you keep on refining it, and you continue to seek the disconfirming evidence so that you can keep upgrade your theory until you get a better gauge of what really causes prices to. Okay. So basically, ito yung ano niya. You observe, you now categorize with market cap, growth, speculative stocks, and you try to find a statement of cause. What causes them? Every time may anomaly, you regroup, you categorize, and then until this gets better and better and better. It's a refinement. Meaning experience also helps in that. Kasi pag na-experience mo na, you have a better idea of what's happening. Like today, things are changing really fast in this environment. You now have to question it. Or are there things that are happening that I did not see? Or are there factors that's driving why my system is not doing as well? So it's always a constant reevaluation. And yeah, it's very hard to do. It's very hard to do. But okay, we'll leave it there. I'll talk about something else. So why is it hard? Kasi so in theory, that's what you want lang naman. You want to go to causation so that now you can now trade better and have an edge. And the honest truth is sobrang hirap umabot dito. It's so hard to go here. Even going to the attributes finding correlation, it's so hard then. Even like what setups work on what environments, on what situations, those are very difficult to do. And the reason is for me there's three reasons. The environment, the trading world is a difficult environment. And I'll talk about why it's called wicked learning. And then number two, there's different games in the market. Number three, we have a lot of biases. Okay, I'll talk about this. Wicked learning. In our world, there is two things. There is skill. There is, on the other extreme, luck. Okay, anything we do. There are things where this is very clear. There are a lot of things where this affects your results. And most things in life, I would say, has luck element talaga, if you would agree with me. So there was this. So this is by Mao Bosin. You can try to look for him. So lahat naman to plagiarize ng ideas na ibang tao. So Mao Bosin, he's saying that you need to distinguish with what you're doing, whether it's pure skill or pure luck. Okay? If it's pure skill, what is the result is reliable. Kunyari, tumakbo kayo with who's that fast? Ernest? Sino yun? Si Bob. Every time you run against him, you're gonna lose. And it's reliable. When now you're in the luck phase, it's not as reliable. Meaning, there are events where you don't know if it's skill or luck. Because the results are probabilistic. Parang Sorry? No, chess is pure skill din eh. So, black and white, pag magaling talaga, kahit anong gawin mo, di mo siya matatalo most of the time. Kasi, pure skill. If it's pure luck, it's different. Let's say poker is, where do you think it is? Poker is nearer to gitna. It's not pure skill, but it's not pure luck also. So, poker, let's say you can have the best combination, pero on the last card, kung biglang nanalo yung kalaban mo, whatever you do, you're still gonna lose that hand. So there are, so sa stocks, do you think where is it? Oh my. Well, call niya to. You have to decide for yourself. But he's saying that there's a lot of luck in the market.
I disagree.
Sorry?
I
Disagree?
disagree.
Okay.
The only difference is this. You have to have your skill. And luck will come. Luck will come if you're there consistently. The luck will come. Kasi if you, because that's why it's a process.
scientific, it's rule-based. When you continue to do it, because it's a probability game, 30 to 40%. So you need that skill. It's a skill that you learn through time. The most important thing is during the process of learning, you don't get killed first. Parang hindi ka muna
Yes. Yeah. But I think you're saying with a large sample size, the skill will come out. Yes. So we're talking about small sample sizes right now. So for example, a friend of mine, nilagay niya sa pera niya sa Bitcoin at 1,000.
luck yan.
Yes. So there's luck involved in the market. I guess that's the point. So he sold that 15,000. I don't think I can ever replicate that kasi in-all-in niya. So it's very hard to determine in the short run skill and luck. I guess that's what he's trying to say.
But in the long run,
Yes.
your friend is dead.
Yes, yeah.
I'm sure
Because it's very hard to replicate.
I'm sure that 12,000, he will be buying back already. So obviously, siya.
Correct. So my point is, it's very hard to learn in this environment when there's luck and skill involved. Because for most parts, we would mistake results with skill. If you can. Anyway, I'll go into this more. But my point is, there's a mix in the short run. There's a mix of luck in the market. There's skill, but there's luck. Let's say even the game. Parang you could. Yung game na nalagay tayo 1,000, technically marami are trying to get the luck, di ba? Lalagay ka ng basura stock na hopefully. So there's, in the short run, luck plays a big role in results. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Versus chess, in the short run, luck doesn't play any role at all kasi you lose again and again and again. So because of that, they coined this wicked learning environments when there's luck involved. So when there's pure skill, every feedback is clear. So these are in sports, these are in music. The feedback is very clear. When you're doing something right, you tweak it, you get better at it, you do it again, you have that same result. So when you're pure skill, your outcome quality is tied to decision quality. How good you decide will determine how good is the result. The problem is when there's skill and luck, it gets tricky. Because feedback sometimes is not stable. You do a setup, it's gonna work sometimes, it's not gonna work sometimes. So if you don't have a system, you don't know whether you're doing things right or wrong because the results are inconclusive in the short run. And the relationship between outcome quality and decision quality is not direct, especially for small sample sizes. Okay, that's okay. So the biggest issue this is by Annie Juk, yung sinaset ni Aldous, is we like to result. What is resulting? Resulting is we like to judge qualities based on the outcome. That is human nature. Whenever we are not kasi wired to think in probability, so whenever there's a good outcome, we would assume it's probably a good result. Good judgment. Whenever there's a bad outcome, we probably assume it's a bad judgment. We don't look at the quality of decisions. And it's difficult when your environment is skill and luck. And so our brains are wired for narratives, not statistics. We like to recognize patterns, we can invent ones that don't exist. So, sa poker, there's this good analogy daw. Si Phil Ivey, he's one of the best players. At the time in 2000 something, he went all in. The opponent went all in. And siyempre tayo, kita natin yung cards. Parang everyone knew that the opponent was gonna win. And so that announcer said, because Phil is so good, he might be able to get away from this one. But people like Annie Juk are saying, it's a bit of resulting, meaning there are times, because of your available information, talagang mag-all in na siya at matatalo siya. Meaning, he has to make that bet because over a big sample size, he will win that bet. But there are times, sadly, when the results just don't reflect your decision quality. So, mali daw yung thinking that if he's good, he will get out of it. Because if he's good, he will call that bet every time, such that over the long run, he's net positive. And so, Yeah, so where we judge this? So two studies lang, quick lang, three. So people were given with two options: $200 for 100% sure, babayaran ka 200, or we'll do a randomized where 80% chance you'll get 300. So what decision should you do? What decision? Should be, if you're probabilistically, this one has an edge. Kasi 240 yung expected value nito eh. Meaning, over time, if you choose this, you will get more. And so they told this to people who were surveying, and they said, ito yung results. So 80% eh. So 80% time, 300. The people who rate this decision as a good decision. So rating from negative 30 to 30. But if you lost, this is the outcome, they will rate that decision to choose that as a negative decision. Meaning, we just look at the results so parang we think it's really reflective of the decision quality natin. It's human nature. Kasi ito sobrang obvious na eh, pero people still go back to it. There's another study where parang depende sa treatment, let's say some treatments in cancer has, let's say, 70% chance. Some have a 30% chance. Depends on how I tell you the last patient did, it would affect your decision. If I told you the last patient died, even on this, you'd probably not want to do it. If I told you, alam mo, sobrang galing na doctor na to, the last patient got healed. Even if you know it's 30%, you would be attracted now to this decision. Meaning, we're just wired to think of outcome. That's just so normal. So last is, parang gumawa sila ng coin toss daw, and 5 coin tosses, and then they ask people to call it. So this is like the best guy, like he called all 5 coin tosses right. This is like the worst guy, he called all 5 coin tosses wrong. And so they asked now a group of people, they say, we'll give you the worst guy, but you can pay 25% so that you can switch to the best guy. And normally now, 82% will make that switch. Even this is all chamba lang. I know this is just a study, but I think we can relate to it. Na we are just so attracted to results. That is human nature. And he's saying, Annie Juk and Mao Bosin are saying, in an environment like the market, it's very dangerous to just simply conclude it as such. Okay. One more, so we'll go back to wicked learning, but one more thing is there are different games in the market. If you've been here long enough, I hope you realize that there's value investing, there's speculation, there's EIP, there's growth, there's shorting, there's intraday scalping, and a rule that works for one may be just the opposite that's needed for the other. Like EIP versus basura trading, they have totally different mechanics. And so, the problem sa market, wicked learning na nga, iba-iba pa yung nangyayari. Iba-iba pa yung per stock na rules. You may disagree with me this, but so, this is my experience that there are just so many games in the market. And it's very hard to learn. And one more, certain causes have more impact. So you're trying to go to causality. I think at the root FTS ng K-Loom and R is the parang pinaka-foundation eh. But there are times when this is not as relevant to your strategy. So kunyari, we talk about sentiment. But if your strategy is an intraday scalper, baka hindi ganun ka-relevant yan eh. If you're just trying to find IMAX intraday. So meaning my point lang here is just there's so many games. Minsan iba-iba tayo ng pinag-uusapan, iba-iba tayo ng style, and we don't communicate it properly, it gets lost. It gets lost talaga. So wicked learning na, different games pa, talagang it's so hard to learn. That's what I'm saying. Because you might, let's say there's an outcome, I tell you this is what I did, but it does not fit your system, you get confused. Okay, we'll go over this one. And lastly, judgment under uncertainty. This is kind of famous. Si Kahneman, he won the Nobel Prize kasi in economics. on psychology. It's a psychologist saying, whenever we are making decisions in uncertain situations, we have biases. It's just, bulok lang tayo. We're not trained to think parang dati daw, it's either there's a lion or there's no lion. We don't say there's a 70% chance there's a lion. Parang ganun talaga. It's either there is or there's not, and we act that way. And I think it makes sense for survival purposes. But in areas like the markets or poker, it's not that good. And two most pronounced biases that affects us, one is overconfidence. If we ask everyone in the room whether they're better than average drivers now, more than 80% will say they are. Meaning, people are normally overconfident, which is not bad, which is, I think, you're a healthy, normal being if you are confident, overconfident. Number two is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is, kung may theory ka na, whatever things you read or you look for, you're trying to support that theory. You don't think that it's gray. It becomes black and white. I mean, it happens to me all the time, so I feel everyone could relate to that. If I think market's gonna drop, I could find all the things that I'm gonna read that would convince me that way. So because of these two things, in wicked learning environments, it's even dangerous. It's even dangerous now. So it is now, so in areas where there's skill and luck, confidence and actual results are not correlated. That's the dangerous part. The more confident ones do not result in more consistent results because of all these biases and because of the environment that we're in. And so by not knowing this, it could actually deter being able to learn properly from yung finding anomalies. Kasi when you're overconfident or you're confirmation bias, you don't want to go back and look for anomalies. You're gonna assume that's it. So by not willing to go back and look for anomalies, you're never able to evolve your causality to a better framework. Okay. So medyo heavy so you can read up on these things if you're really interested in it. Kasi ako addict ako sa these things lately. So how do we get better? How do we get better daw? If it's pure skill, there's one word. This is Anders Ericsson, book niya P. You do deliberate practice. If it's pure skill. If you're gonna do chess, you study the games, you're gonna run, you're gonna go basketball, you improve your shooting every time, and you get better and better at it talaga with a good coach. Intuition works well here because the feedback na is very stable. And improvement, how you improve in a pure skill environment, normally a bit linear. Maybe might excess a start, but kinda linear over time. When it's pure luck, he's saying that this is dangerous. Meaning if you're just thinking that you're gonna go do the same thing every day and you think you're improving, and sometimes you would make conclusions that are not really correct because of the function of luck in the game. So here you do the same thing every day, it'll work. Here you do the same thing every day, it gets dangerous. That's what I'm saying. You can spend 10 years in front of a screen, but if there's nothing improving, it's very dangerous, I'm saying. So he's saying that you need to focus what we always hear, sometimes in the house, process. What is the process that you're trying to build that gives you that edge? By focusing on a process, you don't care what the next result will be. You care about the results over a bigger sample size. So improvement curve is normally non-linear. For me, by my experience, it's never ganyan . Sometimes, ganun, mamatay, and then may burst of insight, and then wala na naman, minsan nagtatry ng burst of insight. So the improvement is shaky.
But that's not your portfolio. That's your perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, minsan dala-dala, but yeah.
Just to be clear,
Yeah,
baka kasi isipin ng mga tao, that's portfolio-based
But minsan nadadala din ako, but yeah. Or in a perfect world, you're improving the process of how you understand things, not the results. Yeah, not the results. Okay, I'll discuss this more later. Okay, I hope. So meaning, my point here lang is, because of the so many aspects such as wicked learning, different games, you need to work on the process. And the process is time spent outside trading hours normally, where you look at what's working, what's not working. That's why all this analytics is very important. Because you're trying to develop that process and it cannot be done while trading. And that's my point. I mean, people can disagree, but that's how I see it. The process is done outside the market hours. And it's extra work. It's a lot of extra work. Teaching for me helps. Why? Because you're forced to now reflect on the process even if I'm not trading. That's why, if you've heard, most of the Kalum professors will say teaching helped them better. Kasi you're forced to look at things outside market hours. So basically, you're improving the process. So what's in a process? My mind, this is the bulk of my topic now in the next 20 minutes. But first is, it has to have an edge. Second, there's a way of thinking that's built in developing the process. I think if it's edge, it always starts with, I think FPSR is the foundation na. Para the setups have an edge. When you talk about fundamentals, there's an edge. But how you connect them all together to causality, that's a challenge. So what's your edge? It's either, personally, it's either analytical. You analyze things, you see things that happened before, it happens again, or behavioral. A lot of times, yung technicals naman natin, very behavioral in edge. You're buying because you know that greed and fear repeats, and you're trying to catch on it. I don't want to spend my time on this, but what the point sometimes here is that, alam mo yung umutaw ko na kanina, may tatlong triangles, may face. And then, here it becomes 80% psychology.
Does it work? Why?
Yeah, does it work? And then, but here psychology is like 10%. Sometimes my fear is we spend, especially when you're young or you're new, you forget that it's not the psychology when you're starting. Meaning, when you're starting, kahit anong pukpok mo sa psychology, kung wala kang edge, wala rin mangyayari what I see. So when you're starting golfer daw, kahit anong gawin mo sa mindset mo, if your form is wrong, you're not gonna get it right. So sometimes I think we forget to ask this question. Baka may edge mo talaga yan. And we keep on pukpuk lang sa psychology baka mindset ko, but it's not always the case. So what's the logic in each edge? Philippine market versus global. That's like, even those simple things like walang commission sa bolts, those are edges that I think sometimes you don't appreciate that they are very big edges that you can't just bring it out of the Philippines. This is Steenbarger, so ito yung medyo idol ng marami. Mahaba to, I like his blogs, but he's saying that it is your methods, not your psyche, that need working or working, because when traders experiences distress and behavioral problems, minsan bine-blame lahat sa psychology, but maybe wala kasi talagang edge So kung wala talagang edge, kahit anong gawin mo, you would feel stress. Kasi it doesn't result in returns. There's just no edge in what you're doing. So only daw after establishing that you're sound, that your process is sound, should you work on psychology. That's what he's saying. Maybe, I think dapat sabayan, but I think the main point is yun. Okay, so gusto na i-stress. Okay, sinama ko lang to. But, i-process ko na lang. Okay, so now I want to focus on the way of thinking. Way of thinking. I want to introduce one guy which I'm kind of obsessed. I read a lot about him recently. And his name is Philip Tetlock. He wanted to study experts. Because there's this he's saying that there's so many experts in, hindi lang to stock market in politics, in economics, and he says that how are they really doing when they make calls or they make statements publicly or not. Okay? So he did a 21-year study that ended in 2004, 1983 to 2004. He found 284 experts and he said, can we do a project? Wala lang, parang I just want you to make predictions. And they made 27,000 predictions and hindi yata alam nila na he tracked them all. But these were long predictions, 3 to 5 year predictions. And sadly now, for the average prediction was just, parang walang edge, just little better than guessing. Okay, so may good ending on it. But as I was saying, so this is the problem. There is an inverse correlation between fame and accuracy. Famous experts had among the worst prediction records because they tell a compelling story. As we said, we are sold by narratives, by results. We are not sold by the process or the decision quality. And to gain fame, it helps to tell tight, simple, clear stories that grab the audience. Alam niyo naman to I think, diba? When I teach at Kilom, it's very different. You're not gonna go, or when you go to ABS or ANC, you're not gonna say, di ko alam pwede rin ito mangyari, pwede rin ito mangyari, pwede rin ito mangyari. I mean, no one wants to listen to that. So to be famous, you have to make bold calls. And people will forget what you said anyway most of the time. But people will remember when, or you can boast of it when the times are right. Right? So, and these are normal. I think this is normal practice. And I'm not saying this is bad. I mean, that is human nature. So if the people react to results, you want to get their attention, you have to sell it the right way. That is human nature. But I'm saying for our purposes, you want to improve, you cannot be too focused on results. So iba to. What you want to do with public versus what you want to do internally to improve is very different. But they're never in doubt. They're confident. And he says that what mattered is hindi what he's thinking, but how he or she thinks now. And I'll discuss this more, but basically there's two types of thinkers. He generalized, obviously, but foxes are able to hold opinions on multiple mental models, I would say. Example, hindi ka lang it's not just one cause. Parang let's say stock market. I really believe that there are multiple causes. That's why FTSR. There's F, there's T, there's S, there's R. A hedgehog, on the other hand, isa lang yung view niya forever because of ganun. Because ganun lang, ganun. And he cannot change his mind when the variables are changing. And so what he found was foxes did better than the chimps, but hedgehogs tend to do worse. But as we said, media likes the hedgehog. The public wants a hedgehog. The public doesn't want a fox who's saying if this, if this, if this. A public wants a hedgehog where pro-abortion or, well, no, mali. No, basta, basically isang message lang yung binibenta niya. Hindi ko ma-explain but no. That's not, but, no. Kasi ano yung mga normally public statement, basta yung mga one simple, it sells, but obviously, when that's your mindset, you will force everything to follow that thinking. And markets are as complex as it can be. It cannot be just one variable. So, he made a second book. And this is this is the Government Intelligence Agency. Kasi they screwed up a lot. They not screwed up a lot, but they were so confident on Saddam's mass weapons of destruction. And wala. So, they wanted to know whether they themselves can improve forecasting. So they created what's the best way You find enough people who's addicted to these things, and they create a tournament for just a $250 Amazon coupon. But so many people joined. 500 questions were asked. There were 1 million forecasts over a span of 4 years. The forecasts now are shorter though, 1 year horizon. So it's easier, I guess, to forecast than yung isa. In his team, 2,800 volunteers, there were top 2% where he calls them super forecasters. Meaning they're able to predict things more accurately sometimes than the intelligence community. So things like, would there be a strike on a North Korean satellite in the next 6 months? So very, very general stuff that you want to predict. And they were able to find people who were able to do that. And in his opinion, in Tetlak's opinion, Foresight, we're trying to gauge things probabilistically, can be a skill that's be found. And one test now is persistence, meaning if you're accurately predicting things over time, I'll share a bit more. But basically, when you say something is 70% going to happen, what does that mean? That means that 70% of the time that happens. 30% of the time, it doesn't happen. Right? So basically, we'll talk about that test later, well calibrated. And about 70% now of those top 2% remain in the LN ranks from 1 year to the next, more than a chance. Now, I mean, there are people who think differently, who are able to calibrate expectations very well and learn from it. Natuwa na ako dito pero hindi siya, never mind, later na to. Basically, he finds we move too fast from confusion and uncertainty to a clear and confident conclusion without spending any time. And sometimes it happens, and we're like, I'm guilty, like, oh yeah, pwede nga yan, like, bullish ako ngayon, medyo bearish na ako. It happens, but sometimes he's saying there's a way, it's probabilistic, and sometimes we forget it because we look at the results, And normally the pundits didn't want to be scored. So, because to be honest, if you're a pundit, you're being hired to go in front of CNBC, there's upside, there's no upside in being measured. There's so many downsides. So they didn't want to join all these forecasting tournaments, which makes sense to me, which really makes sense to me. And so I just want to share some things that how they thought differently. IQ versus RQ. Have you heard of IQ versus RQ? What it says that IQ is not necessarily the right ingredient. But so RQ is how good your beliefs map the real world. RQ. How well your beliefs map the real world. How we measure that, no, you can read up on it now. Pero when you think the world is the way it is, kasi minsan we have so many biases nga. We think things are like that, pero maybe they're not really like that. So we're saying that the super forecasters tend to have a high RQ and only 30% correlated with IQ. Meaning IQ is not, when you're super smart doesn't mean your beliefs map with what's really happening to life or to the real world in general. Number 2, high in fluid intelligence and open-minded. They're very open-minded and they're able to find novel patterns. Parang may IQ test kasi, it's not an IQ test, but ito may test to but alam ko parang kapag nakita nyo, I'll just show it. So, something maybe you want to do it on your own, but I can't find it. But basically, these are tests where yung parang may gano'n, tapos find the next one. So, medyo mataas daw sila dyan. Parang test natin ito ng college entrance exam. Parang what's the next pattern? So, they're very good daw in those things, meaning finding patterns. They use base rates. What's base rate? Have you heard of this? Whenever we study a company or we look at an event in our lives, we are biased. So when I look, let's say when, let's say, Peter, what's the probability you think you would make it as a trader?
100%.
100%. Okay, this is inside view. If we hire someone from Kalum today, what's the probability that you think he'll be successful?
60.
Okay, very good. This is what I'm saying, and this is the outside view. This is the inside view. And normally, we elevate the inside view because it's us. You know, we want to paint ourselves in a rosy picture. You don't want to paint yourself in a bad light. But so being able to understand the outside view is very important. So kunyari, let's say, whenever you study a company or you find a chart, you have a bias kasi inaral mo to or inalam mo to. But sometimes to ask, on this similar occurrence in the past, how often does it work? Or did it work that often? And we forget to ask that. We forget to ask that. So inside view versus outside view. Sometimes they ask, if you're married, they'll ask, what are the chances you're gonna be happy? Normally 100%. Getting married pa lang. And then they'll ask, what are the chances you think someone else that's just getting married will be happy in 10 years? And then it's lower. Meaning you're always biased to yourself. It's not bad. It's normal. But he's saying to be more accurate in when you look at things, you're marrying, you have to consider both. At least consider both. Especially in an environment like the market again, where there's skill and luck involved. It gets complex, but basically that's what. It's a bit nerdy, but he's saying that they always update things probabilistically as it happens. So kunyari, let's say you're so bullish on the market. As prices continue to go down, do you update? Sometimes you have to update properly. Or you have information that's happening, you have to update. And we humans tend to be not so good in updating events as they happen. Even in our lives, probably, in our relationships or what, as things happen, minsan in denial tayo na nangyayari or whatever, until finally the reality has to sink in. So we're very slow in updating to what's happening. And these guys do very well. Comfortable with a sense of doubt. So very strange, because as we said, we are in a job where we like to think 100%. But he's saying that the most conclusive statement you can take from that study is beliefs are hypotheses to be tested, not treasures to be guarded. Whenever you have a belief, you want to know if it makes sense, if it's true, if it's validated by data. That's it. So does it really work? So that's why yun yung tatlo, does it work? You have to spend a lot of time really asking these things until you have a system where now you can make it work. So beliefs are hypotheses to be tested, not treasures to be guarded. Right? So even when we teach this, sometimes kasi you have to question it. Why does this work? Why do we teach momentum? You have to find and understand the logic so that finally you'll reach causality and not just. And by doing this, you have to find, sometimes there are things when it doesn't work, you try to find, bakit dito gumagana, but dito gumana? Right? As simple as, let's say, right, in blue sky, right? Lawrence doesn't like it. But there are times when it works, there are times it doesn't work. You have to go back and try to study it. And normally we don't go back enough to study these things. And we have biases now that's built into our nature. It's matrabaho talaga yun. Matrabaho. Not saying this is not an easy way out. Are able to synthesize multiple points of view, so this is a Fox mindset. And Charlie Munger, this is the second in command after Buffett. He made a lot of changes down in Buffett, and he's saying, you've got to have multiple mental models in life. Hindi lang one. Even not just trading wise. You have to have multiple mental models where, because if you only have one or two that you're using, human nature would mean that you will torture reality so that you'll fit whatever you're thinking, or at least you'll think it's true. I don't know how to, but he's saying that different fields in life, like even physics, biology, economics, all of them have mental models. Na ideally, you want to at least get the gauge of what? At the very basic, ano ba yun? even successful business, what are those mental models? So sometimes what he's saying is, it doesn't really translate to trading results. Kasi parang, minsan, I like to read a book about moats. What does it do to trading results in the short term? None. Zero. But sometimes you don't know. You can connect things that you just weren't able to see before. And so, yeah. Vague verbiage slows learning cycles. This is like the motto of Philip Kotler. We like vague verbiage. It's safe. It works on the media. But personal, ideally, you want to be more concrete for you to learn. So again, this is different, di ba? Kasi, whenever someone says it's a serious possibility daw, so they survey the CIA. Ano mean a serious possibility pag sa CIA na mention? One analyst said it's 80%, the other said it's 20%. Both are serious possibilities. And it gets lost in translation, what you're really saying. Okay? So use specific probabilities and time horizons whenever possible to keep track of whether your theories are really correct. Okay, I'll go back to that a bit. Matapos na tayo. So how to measure your forecast? So, I shared that test. It's the test, I'll share that later. You want to be high in both calibration and resolution. What's that? Calibration is, if you think it's 70%, it's 70% of the time you're correct. If you think it's 100%, 100% of the time you're correct. If you think it's, you don't know, 50% of the time you're correct. You're well calibrated. But sometimes you want to have resolution, meaning most of the time dun sa test, people will either be super sure or lahat 50%. In nature mo. Ayaw maging well calibrated. But if a well resolution, if your resolution, you're able to properly delineate those things you think you know 80% of the time, you think you know 60% of the time. So good calibration and resolution are correlated. So yung test, parang gano'n yun eh. So ito yung test. The difference here is how overconfident. I'm overconfident. This is normal. People tend to be overconfident, 66%. 60% lang tama of the time. So this is not a test of accuracy. You're testing whether the things you know, do you really know? The things you think you don't know, you really not know? And the things you're not sure, you're really not sure. So this is the sample of 2,000 people who took that test online. And if you're within this area, he thinks you're well calibrated. So I'm somewhere here. I'm somewhere here. So I'm like a mean. But there are people who are overconfident. And he's saying that on decisions where there's uncertainty, ideally you want to calibrate yourself properly. If you want to learn from it. This is the normal. This is all those data. Normally, pag hindi mo alam, hindi mo talaga alam. But as you go forward, hindi mo talaga alam pero akala mo alam mo. Like this is normal. Meaning, you're 100% sure, but 77% of the time, you're correct. This is normal, this is all the sum, and it's very dangerous, as we said, this is the overconfidence bias in play. It's very dangerous in an area where the market, where it's probabilistic. Because most of the time, you think it's 100%, baka 77% lang pala yung accuracy ng idea. I'm guilty for that all the time. Diba? Doon ako nadali. And lastly, people are not, yung resolution na mahina. It's either you're super sure, or most of the time, you don't know. You don't want to go here. Parang yes, no, maybe lang. But in life, and in most things, it helps daw, especially for me, especially in areas like even poker, to help to know whether it's a 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%. So, tanong si Javi, my guess is he has that delineation between the probabilities because it will help to be that precise. Okay, siyempre ako, medyo alam ko na yung test, so I had, but yeah. No, I didn't game it, but medyo alam ko yung idea kasi if you don't know the idea, the normal result will be this. But I had an idea, so well, it's still pretty good. So I like it. Okay. So how do you even improve further? To be more precise down in your forecast, you have to collaborate effectively. The point here is that each of us have experiences or we see things that could be different, or we have our own insights on things. So ideally, you want to know what others are thinking, because they could have experiences or insights that you don't have. That's very simple. We have our blind spots, basically. So those who were good enough to achieve super forecasters, so the top 2% in year 1, were 50% more accurate pa when they're part of a team of super forecasters. Meaning, by having a team where you're sharing your objective views, walang personalan, you're trying to gain truth, you get even more accurate. And they said that what's important in a team are 2 qualities. Psychological safety, where you're able to express yourselves without being threatened, without risks that you will be shamed, and diversity of opinion, meaning you have different experiences talaga na you could bring to the table. Okay? Train effectively. So by knowing your biases, it immediately reduces your error. You get more accurate. And finally, what they say, overweight elite forecasters or extremize estimates. What does this mean? If you have a higher chance of being right, your call is given more weight. This is what's being done on Ray Dalio. If you try to read his book, medyo, it's not a fun environment, but basically every person in that house has a believability score. And when they make decisions, the decisions being voted are weighted by your believability score. So it's medyo Big Brother yun dun. So a lot of people don't like, they're also very hostile. So nawawala yung go mo eh. Kasi your believability score goes up and goes down over time. But what he's saying that if you want to go to the truth, this is something to know. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I think you have to operate in that way. And the believability score, in my mind, is depende sa tao eh. Meaning there are people who are very good on this. When he speaks on that topic, I will listen. Or very good on this, when he speaks on that topic, I will listen also. Meaning, hindi naman tayo expert sa lahat eh. So, that believability score for me is dependent on what topic, especially even sa market, that you're talking about. Right? So, in theory, you want to talk to people here. That's why I'm saying, sometimes we don't, actually the new guys don't ask around that much. You want to know who's good in this, who's good in that, who's good in this, who's good in that, so that you can better improve your system all time. Okay? And then extremized estimates. So extremized estimates, this is medyo nerd, I want to talk about it now. If everyone gave 75%, and you're sure, they say 75% pwede mangyari to, and you're sure that their diversity of opinion, meaning hindi sila same mold, the actual percentage of it happening is greater than 75. It could be 85, it could be 90. Because they're bringing to the table different experiences or ways of looking at the market that that one person is not able to see. Basically, it's the wisdom of crowds. Okay, so I think sometimes I digress too much, but so tips to improve the process. So as you want to go from observation to correlation to causality, what are some tips to do? One is you have to think probabilistically. You have to avoid resulting. You have to think things on a big sample size, whether it really works or it doesn't work. It cannot be based on one sample size. Choose an appropriate reference class. So this is Mao Bosin. He's saying whenever you talk about something, ideally you want to have enough sample size to really talk about it. And there are things where kulang talaga yung sample size. Let's say probability of 911. Kulang talaga yung sample size to know that. So very hard to predict certain things. So avoid sample size 1 analysis. I'm very guilty of this sometimes. Kasi mabilis mag-convince eh. I would say, di mo CHP, then I'll show another chart na parang CHP, and then, ta-da! But sometimes the variables that are affecting those circumstances are different. So ideally, you have enough sample size that it's statistically sound. Maintain a decision journal. This is for your own. You don't need to share this. You want to track all that you're forecasting. You would be surprised that whenever we talk, we're making forecasts a lot of the time. So meeting, when you talk to someone, you track it on your own. Don't to share this. You track, you try to put your probability estimates if you want, and you will be appalled, because I was, you will be appalled at what you initially thought and how often it is actually wrong. You will be appalled. But it is through those experiences, those mistakes, where you would go back and reflect, and you keep on improving the way you see the market. So matrabaho talaga. Trabaho talaga. You want to seek this confirming evidence. Very tough to do in a market where we want to look best and we want to assume we understand most things as we're overconfident. But this is very hard. This is seeking this confirming evidence. But you want to do that. Every time I make a call that's wrong, so remember, I'm trying to do that the research now. Recently, diba, 50 days, sabi ko, parang may laban to. Technically, I'm wrong. So now, I'm trying to reflect what areas did I miss in this market condition. And after talking to many people, it looks like sentiment is the missing piece. So I was too focused on the fundamentals. So I was thinking like a hedgehog. But there were other aspects that's always driving price. But by not documenting that call, I might be in denial. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's very tough. It's very not fun to do. Kaya kay Dalio, people don't like to do that in Dalio's place. Only those who want to do it stay there. Improve and find your edges. One is, I think, backtest, but it's not enough. Kasi nga, you will find confirmation bias when you backtest. Copy with pride, I do that. I probably have a weighting on the believability of most of the more veteran traders, and I would copy with pride whenever I hear or listen a strategy that they're doing well. Because I would try to integrate. So, minsan, as simple as, ba't siya kumikita dyan? Ano yung logic? Ano yung stocks na tinrade niya? I would go and dig that down, and I will hunt for it. Wala akong pride. I would try to understand that logic, and I will absorb it if it can be melded with the system that I have. That I call that copy with pride. And teach also. So, okay. So, I think if all of us are copying each other with pride, we'll get a better also of understanding of the market. But syempre, people like to find their own system, which is good. But there are other systems that work in. I think always being curious is crucial for me. Okay. Challenge networks versus support network. Whenever we're down, who do we go to? Go to your support network. You want to have a challenge network. A challenge network is both of you are clear from the start, walang personal, under psychological safety, and your goal is to seek what is the most probable truth. You want to have those in your lives. Hindi pwede lahat support network. Kasi minsan pag down tayo, support, okay lang yan. But it's good, we need this. I have a support network. I mean, technically we're a support network, but we also want to delineate when it's a challenge network. It's a challenge network communication conversation. And I like to do that. Right? We know there are people who tend to do well in that. I mean, in our house, we know who tend to do good in challenging, and I think I appreciate that very much when you challenge what I'm thinking. That's because we're blind spots. We have our blind spots. Meaning, we think we know, but sometimes we don't consider other aspects. And by having a challenge network, you're always trying to consider whether there are things that we fail to see. This is super hard to do. I think this is one of the super hard to do. Sometimes I go to Charles, I have a theory, and I say, parang mali yan. Pero it's not a good feeling, but over time, it helped me so much because when the times it made sense, we try to refine it even better. So whenever there's a fundamental topic in Kalum, we try to keep on upgrade that content. And there are times when I teach it wrongly. But recently, like in 3-year, 5-year, so there are things when you have to tell me when the events evaluation was said, may mali akong ginawa yan. So everyone was saying that maybe you should consider this. So we have to tweak. I have a lattice work of mental models. Try to understand, this is dependent on that everyone wants to do this. I like to read so much things. You have to read that is dependent on what you want. So there are some people who like to read so much, and those mental models are being built in diverse ways. Embrace disagreeableness. This is very tough. Disagreeableness is because of psychological safety, you're able to express your views without fear. Because you think that's your view. And if we don't agree, then we don't agree. There's this Solomon Ash, kung alam nyo to, may isang trial before where they would ask you which this line is close to which line. Which line? A, di ba? But they did something different. They've invited to a classroom, you're the 8th person in that classroom, and everyone answers C. Everyone in front of you has C, 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 ang sumunod mo. And 75% of the participants at least once will go with the consensus. Because we are, I think this is a wiring of our human brain. We don't want to be the outlier because it's, I think maybe dati, on olden times, ma-ostracize ka eh. You're always contradicting, umalis ka na sa tribe ko. So, that's my opinion, that for survival purposes, we don't want to do that. But when you're things like the market, where there's so many aspects that we couldn't see, I think disagreeableness, for me, I really embrace it. And I could find people that are willing to do that. Conduct a pre-mortem. A pre-mortem is what thing, if it fails, what could have been the reason? Because we're so resulting. So since we're so resulting, you want to conduct a pre-mortem. If hindi nangyari tong thesis ko, ano pwedeng cause? And sometimes you can trace them better if you think of it that way. Kasi our brains nga are not built to think of probability. So you wanted cause and effect, o sabi mo nag-fail. Ano pwedeng reason? And maybe they could find better ways so that you can preempt that. And lastly, deep work. I just throw in, yes.
Yung pre-mortem, meaning before it actually happens,
Yeah.
you're already trying to...
Parang kang kontrabida mo eh. Oh. Like, if this did not work, what could have been the reason? If this, let's say the 50 day did not work, what could have the reason this round? And maybe you'll be able to trace elements where you could not see before. And then deep work, all of these things I really believe have to be done in a focused way. Meaning when you try to build your process, it cannot be you're distracted. This is my, singing pa ako lang, kailangan ko lang. But we tend to like to, kasi in this world today, multitasking is the norm. You look at your Facebook, you go to YouTube, but there has been studies that you're not really multitasking. You're just switching your attention from one to the other, and you cannot really learn things when you're not focused. Okay? So, it's something that yes.
Bakit pre-mortem or post-mortem?
Pre. Before it happens, you're doing a pre-mortem na. So, minsan makikita mo baka flaws in planning, flaws in, so you're trying to take the outside view also.
Bago may executive plan.
Yeah.
So, scenario plan.
Yeah, but it's opposite. You're saying nag-fail na eh. You're saying, anong pala yung reason?
So meaning yung, so I'm going to take this trade, pero yung pre-mortem mo, ay assume nag-fail na agad. Bakit siya nag-fail?
Yeah, yes, I think it's pwede. Very hard, very tricky. I don't know. Di ko alam. Di ba kung ganun ba talaga eh? Parang hindi. But overall, maybe a bigger picture. I don't know. Good question. Di ko alam. Pag-isip ako. But, so, ito, patsa-patsa lang ito naman ang mga binabasa ko na sinishare ko. So sometimes I like to do this for I give probabilities of stocks. So I do training on these things. Pero parang mahirap gawin talaga yung sa market eh. Kasi na nag-crash, patay lahat. So for example, in the research, I'm trying, I don't know if it can be done, to build 4 lists. A hype list, a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3. And ideally, over a big sample size, I want stocks here to be able to move up 50%, 75% of the time. Here, mga 20%, here, hindi masyadong makyat. Based on whatever criteria. So, of all the trending stocks. It's a very ambitious goal, but I want that. I want to develop that further. So, because every time we make mistakes, I'm able to tweak back and did we miss something? Why could this be a tier 2? Why is this a tier 1? I want to learn from that.
If you subscribe to SAP, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, simple.
So I guess the right answer is to track whether if they made it a 1, does it really move up most of the
I think
time?
that will save you a lot of purpose. If you're able to That's it. That's the reason why I have SAC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so they seem to be the same. It's a probability that
Correct.
your SAC 1 is your tier 1.
So whenever I'm given that list, to be honest, I will track whether that list
That's right.
is really correct.
So,
So that should be.
it will save you a
Yeah.
lot of cost.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
If you
one way.
subscribe to SACs, I mean, that's already the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In terms of probably not on market timing, but more of the fundamentals.
I think it's earnings momentum, yeah, fundamentals. Yeah.
So you should take a look at that.
Yeah. So something like that. So whenever I'm given a list, you want to vet whether totoo ba talagang high probability. So yeah, so that's one. Okay. So good. So whenever I have a theory, you keep on refining it basically. So for example, I always teach this before na pag 10 times price to sales, ayoko na mahal na. But now, you have stocks today that move up beyond 10 times So I'm trying to find out, ano pwedeng conditions? So network effect where the company gets so big, like a Facebook, where it doesn't have to spend to attract advertisers, was a mental model na nabasa ko na baka nga, yung mga nag-above 10 times, may ganun. So it's very nuanced, and number two, it cannot be proven unless over a big sample size now. So that's why it's so hard to know whether you're really improving or not over a small sample size. So relative strength today, apparently it failed. So I was trying and got crashed. So what went wrong? And now when I talk to everyone, it seems like sentiment was the biggest change, plus overvaluation. So it's research. So yeah, so whenever you have a theory, I always try to look for disconfirming evidence and try to refine that theory even further. And it's not human nature to do it. So, my personal opinion is the journey to causation in the markets is a tough one because of wicked learning, because of daming games, because of our biases. And sometimes when we did the quarterly recently with my group, what I noticed, it is very difficult to extract lessons from the market. It is very difficult. Meaning normally the lessons you extract are very shallow, but the broad base, you see where you can find patterns that before, it's so hard. And that's why we're in a community. Ideally, the more experienced traders are able to share those patterns to the younger ones even before they experience it, so that they could now shortcut that learning process. Because it's very difficult. Ngayon, it's a change in sentiment. Those are patterns that if you had not experienced it, even I'm just experiencing, parang minsan lang na-experience it. By talking with people who have more experience, you're able to learn faster. And you might not even be able to consider it if someone did not point that out firsthand. So it's very difficult to extract lessons from the market. That's why it is very easy to just keep on trading, go home, trading, chart, go home, and very difficult to learn and improve that process further. Very difficult. Because of all this, we can learn in many games process. And so, summary, improve your process, keep track of your improved process, keep track of your forecast. And focus, to be honest, less on short-term results. Very hard to do. Sometimes, parang, I would think that I can, what can I say, my losses, I'm grateful that I was allowed to lose. I guess that is the part was that time boss is saying, it takes so long kasi to finally go to causation that you won't normally survive that trip. So in my opinion, sometimes minsan sakit ulo ako so I would take losses before malaki, but I personally believe that those allowed me to build a better causation and to have those edges I have today. That's my opinion. So anyway, controversial natin, but anyway, so but that's how I see I'm grateful. And so we're trying. So for me, I'm always trying to share whatever experience I'm able to get from all those opportunities that were given. Yes, that's how I see it. That's why I want to share it. Kasi pinayalan ako matalo for all those lessons. So that's what I see. That's what I see. Question your beliefs, seek confirming evidence, embrace diversity of opinion. Diversity is very hard. Minsan kasi yung mindset mo, isa lang, may FTS, or sometimes there are people who just think it's T. I think there's two ways to think about it. There's one who thinks that all the rest are useless. I think that's dangerous. There's the other who thinks, I'm not good in F, but I can find areas where the F is difficult. Let's say movers or IPOs or speculative stocks. No, you know the F has a difficult game. I can play in or gaps. You can play in those areas where mahirap ng F eh. And so that's a different mindset for me rather than thinking wala ko ito. So that's my opinion. You need to test. That's why you need to keep on testing your theories whether they're really true or not. Lastly, there's a compound effect in life, which I believe. That's why now when you're learning, skill and luck, in a skill and luck environment, the growth is always stepwise. It's never linear. And I believe it's because of the compound effect. As the causation keeps on getting richer and richer, your experience just accelerates over time. Right? Kasi dumadami nag-reach and experience rin. So for last, I'll just leave a quote from Minervini. It took me about 6 or 7 years before I was profitable. Mag-isa lang siya. Sabi niya, mag-isa ako. Did not have someone to teach me. And then from that point, it took another 2 years before I was able to do this well. So I had a good decade invested before I really started to do well. But then in just a few years, I made more money than I dreamed of making in the entire 10 years, so it eventually paid off. Meaning that it's not linear. That's the sad reality of this business. I think, in my opinion, the growth is when your processes keeps on improving and you get jumps in insight. So if you want to stay here, stick with it and take your time, but the main thing is not to try to rush it. Not to try to think that you're going to learn it too fast. We're all guilty of this. I've been always guilty of this. It does take some time because you need to experience most of those things and keep on looking for those disconfirming evidence. So, yeah. So, sa kanya, 6 years, then 2 years na okay, and then 1 year, super sumabog na raw. Very different from the normal, you work every day and you, very different. That's how I see it. Improving your process is key. I think, personally, you use the house rules, it's very stable, you won't lose. But to get to that next level, you need to keep on improving your processes and improving your processes. So that's my belief. So, and it's hard. Yeah. Okay, don't know if, that's how I personally believe. So I'm sharing it to you. So whether it makes sense to you, you have to absorb it na lang. But that's how I really believe is the way to learn and why it's so hard to learn in this market. May questions? Kasi walang trading masyado.
I think personally, it's very good. The only thing is that I think for most of the traders, I've always encouraged you to execute. The reason is very simple. Because if you don't execute, then everything is analysis paralysis. So when you have a setup, you have to execute. Whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Right? As long as there's a rule, there's a system, there's a process, and the FTSR basically comes into play. The sad part always, like the reason why you have so many moving parts is because of the sentiment. Right? Sentiment. Like say for example, the market is in a channel up, like a double top, but in the last 1 or 2 months, we already can feel that there's something wrong with the market because the market is overbought. You can see that the longs are not working. So when the longs are not working, that means the sentiment is changing again. And so I don't know if it's just an experience, but the reason why we've been waiting for this big drop was the last 2 months we've not really been doing it. I mean, it's not that we didn't see it, it's just that we don't know when it's gonna happen. That's always the challenge. These are always a challenge. That's why I think 2 weeks ago, with the breakdown of the Russell, so alam mo na, andyan yan eh, diba? But the thing is, would it go down and go down? I mean, there's still a thousand reasons why. But I think the most important is that if you're a trader, you need to do what you're saying is that you need to improve yourself by putting time, understand the sentiment, the bigger picture, right? And and then just follow the rules. Once you follow this, you won't really lose much. Because when it breaks out, bumalik square na ako. Hindi ka naman matatalo eh. Ang problema is how when it's so tiring, right, that you have to put work, you have to put that. But then when the luck comes, when the sentiment has changed to a trending, to let's say a strong bull or a strong bear, then you can, that's where the jackpot is in. Right? Even in their meeting, I'm so sure, the day that he made so much money, I'm so sure that that was the strongest, strong bull, yeah. So then, with all the 6-7 years that he's trained, 1 year lang, kinita nila natin. I'm so sure, because the strong bull came. Took 7, 8 years to learn his skill, and then when the strong bull came, he was able to capitalize it. I think that's the only reason why, when I said a while ago, whether you put on with learning, you're saying that, yes, it's a skill. It's a skill that you need to turn into a craft that where you get to hone your skill. And then, when the luck comes, you're there mentally prepared to take it. Because if you're not doing your work, you're not doing your time, executing, learning it, the day will come. You just see it goes up without even participating. That's always the logic. But that's why, I always tell Leonard what he was saying is simple. So Leonard, basta huwag ka na mapagod. I want to tell you, see, you're experimenting, which we have seen already before. But if I don't let you execute it, you won't keep it. Yeah? So the critical learning is really, when there's a setup, you have to execute. Then you manage it. Right? So that you don't lose too much. Because the sentiment is changing, you can lose it. And you don't want the drawdown, you don't want to have a big drawdown, because once you have a big drawdown, it's so hard to, I think Jen said you remember that. It's so difficult to get up. So those are the challenges of each and every one of us. But the key is really, is that you need to learn the rules of the game, and you need to manage your losses. If you don't manage your losses, you'll be out of it. Now if you're just basically here, just like you said, it's so difficult, so many things you have to learn, and you can't make it, you really need be mindful of that. Because if you cannot execute, you're just, one day you wake up, you're already 50 years old and you have not made a single dime. You have to be very, very mindful of that. This is not for you. You need to start looking for something. Because this is really a very, very difficult. It's a marathon. That's why we always call it a marathon. So you need to reflect on your own. Right? And then, if you don't understand it, please go to your coaches, go to your supervisors, and try to learn the game. Because this is such a really. But I'll tell you today, we're happier than the rest of the world. The world is really in shambles. You wouldn't believe how many calls I received today. There's so many people. That's why it's just, everybody was so negative. Right? So anyway, I think this is very good. This is very good. Very good that and the thing is that these are all probabilities. That's the sad part of this business. While we're talking about what, similar formations but different results. It's always this. The most important thing is this. Yes, different results, but if you execute it, the one that doesn't work, you don't lose money. The one that works, you make money. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Because if you look at it, because if you don't manage the losses, zero-sum game ka lang. Zero-sum game. Zero-sum game. There is really a technique for you. The time stop is very good. If you're just a trader, if you don't understand, let's say, what Leonard was saying, even with all this research that we do, it changes. Because like what you're saying kanina, 10 times price to sales. Today it's 30 times price to sales. Huh? It's so simple. Just to get it. There's so much money, and to just pile the basket. I was just this morning. I was in the PSC. I was talking to the Deutsche people. So the game has changed completely. And the reason why valuations are because of the passive funds that comes in. It creates this huge disparity. It's also scary. It's also scary. So for example, now let's say like, let's just share it with you. Even the liquidation that's going on right now. Even the insiders don't want to buy. Nagbibigyan ng discount sa kanila. Let's say price, discount, 5-10%. Ayaw rin ng insider. Sabi ng insider, maghanap ka muna ng may kasama ako. Looking for may kadamay. Takot na rin sila eh. That's how funny it is. Right? It's always darkest at the bottom. Takot. Even the insiders, natatakot na rin. Scary. About today is irrational state. Very good, very good. Thank you, thank you. Good.
So whenever a boss speaks, napapansin siya maraming mental models na embedded in it. But passive fund, driving valuations, that is a mental model that's not, I don't think, that talagang you need to understand what that means. So those statements sometimes are so deep because he probably reads so much that it becomes so normal to say it. But that statement is very deep. Passive funds causing that overvaluation. Maraming implied dyan eh. So, wala. So that's sakto kasi na mention it. Just sharing that the mental models is so rich for some people, and I think that's necessary, especially I want to scale things eventually one day. That has to be that deep in understanding so many things.
What's RQ?
Rational quotient, it's how good, I don't know how they measure it, maybe you can Google it, how your thoughts really map reality. So, ano ba example? Hindi ko alam eh. But they say that Buffett is saying also the IQ is your engine, RQ is how you use that engine to really understand reality. Kasi you can be so smart and minsan kontra, baka against you pa kasi you're so biased and you think you know everything. So RQ is that kind of humility of seeing things properly.
Is that the difference between something that's an ideal situation versus a realistic situation? Or is different?
Separate yourself. Right?
Sure. Hindi ko siya like general knowledge. Hindi siya ganun. Parang the reality of it now.
I mean, the reason why is because like, I assume if you're like high in IQ or let's say like you're an open-minded person, generally you go through that process anyway. You understand?
Yeah. Ideally.
I mean, even if you didn't teach me anything, just being honest now, right? I mean, like you go through this process even without thinking of it too much.
But I don't think everyone does that. That's why.
And because the reason why is because I assume that some people may not have high open-mindedness.
Probably. So can that be trained? I don't
That's
know.
why I'm asking you.
Good question.
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge. Because, for example, let's say you're talking. Some people might be here, but not listening. Right? I mean, you can see that in your training classes. It's the same thing. I'm at the back. I can see who's listening, who's not. Right? So deliberately, it's not that maybe they're using their phone, they're watching COL, right? So in other words, they're here physically, but it's the same thing. Huh? Let's say you go to church, right? You're not listening to the priest. Possible, right? But you're there physically, not mentally or spiritually, you're trying to understand what it is. Those are the challenges that we have today. Because that means maybe, alam ko naman sinasabi mo. So you try to just disregard it. But in reality, you should be listening, right? Try to understand what you're saying and learn from it. Because if you don't put time and try to listen, what's the point of being here physically? I mean, this is not recorded where you pasok ka ba, nandito ka ba, nandito ka ba. Right? So that means learning is very important. Learning is very important. So why we're here is because we also want to learn. Well, there are a lot of things, like you said, it's called the blind spot barrier that we have. There are a lot of things that we can't see, right? Well, but when you're looking at the other person, like we're saying, you already have how many percent na decide to be successful already. But if you're looking at yourself, alam mo, guwapo ka. And in reality, pangit ka pala, hindi mo ba alam na pangit ka, di ba? Di ba? Ay, that's the worst thing. Di ba? Kala mo, guwapo ka ng guwapo. Pero in reality, pangit ka na. Pinagsasabi na pangit ka. Hindi mo pa rin nakikita. Which is good sometimes. Di ba? You need that confidence. But you have to be mindful of it. That's why the Ray Dalio thing was, it's important. I mean, we know that anyway. That we need to help or manage our ego. We need to understand. And also we need to understand that we are all wired and very different. Because you could have a parent that is difficult, right? You're smart, but you have a parent that even though how smart you are, they still say that you're stupid. Di ba? Parang kulang ka pa. But in reality, you're so successful na in your subconscious level, akala mo pangit ka pa. Pero gwapo-gwapo ka na for the eyes of the other people. And you can go vice versa. So being racist is very difficult. In an environment, it could also be difficult. You know, I was with the CFO of Ben Press. Poor guy, I met him downstairs. I know him very well. Hindi na sabihin na kami, so, parang nasa ka na? I have to leave na. Hindi ko na kaya dito sa Bobby Lopez. So, bakit? Araw-araw kasi minumura kami. To the point na, parang feel ko na bobo-bobo ako. But when he left to another company, he was the star. So, an environment is also very difficult. In an environment, right, wherein you're every day, minumura ka, to the point. The reason why they're there is you lose your dignity, right? But in reality, that full organization is a problem. So those are the major challenges for that. And this morning I was with and he asked me, we're 20th year, what should we be doing? So if you ask me, I don't want to spend it. Right? I just want to have maybe a celebration for all of us. Just enjoy it. Right? You ask me, that's something we have. So those are the challenges always. On the outside, we think we want to be guapo, right? We want to be the best. The day we celebrate it, let's say in the exchange, ring the bell. What do you think the other people will say? All our other competitors, what do you think they will say? Could be, diba? In an environment that is difficult, in an environment that is very challenging. Ano yung just saying na yan, pag nakikinig ka sa first portion, ay wala mong trabaho dito, ang hirap pala kumita ng pera, which is really difficult. Suddenly. The other day, di ba you were asking me, building these things, how many people do you? Ano sinabi ko sa'yo? 5. Dalawang tao na, pwede. Only to have these things. 3 to 5 people. The size of portfolio can make money. But the thing is, we love what we're doing. That's what they call, di ba? Very challenging talaga. That's why we need all the help. Everybody, we have to collectively try to help each other so that we can all do well. And that's really the goal. The reason why we have this is because that's what we want. We want you, everybody else, to do well. And we need the help. Because we cannot help those people who don't want to help themselves. Because it's so difficult, it's so taxing, right? We're trying to help you. Because you're not listening, your mind is not open. And you just basically pop around to the point we're in. 10, 20, 30 years later, you look at yourself. So, parang naging something cost fallacy ka na. You're still waiting for that luck to come in for you to make money. But in reality, you will never be able to catch it. But if you don't put time, you deliberately put time.